on the United States, primarily focused on military industry, on research and development pertaining to a whole broad spectrum of topics that have military applications, but also political. J.D. Vance himself maybe said more than he needed to when he said, I think Epstein was probably an Israeli intelligence operation. To do what, J.D.? Why would Israel want to, sexually compromise American political industrial figure? What is the purpose of that? We know what the purpose is. So Israel is literally the number one threat to the national security of the United States of America, has been for some time.
What is the Trump-supported legislation, which goes by different numerical sections because they haven't finished drafting the National Defense Authorization Act, but the one that would create some sort of a bizarre, unprecedented, unconstitutional amalgam, if you will, between Israeli military and intelligence and American military intelligence. Can you explain this to us, what they're doing?
For sure. It's in the chairman's markup, which is a terminology used in the House of Representatives when the chairman of a committee decides he doesn't want to have any debate. He's just going to put the issue out there. The chairman's markup of the NDA, Section 219 is the House version. And in the Senate, they have a version called Section 1217, I think it is. This is sort of because a lot of people go, hey, you're saying that the Israeli military and the American military are going to become one? Nope, not saying that at all. That's the beauty of this arrangement, because on paper, there's two militaries. But what makes a military work? Training, equipment, and then the relationship between military and defense industry, research and development. All research and development is done, based upon the needs of an establishment. What's happening here is the Israelis are going to be making an end around. Normally, when you're going to get involved in this kind of interaction with a foreign government, because we have close relations with the British, with South Koreans, with Japan, and such, Israel. There's laws that are involved. There's defense technology, exchange laws. You can't just hand technology over. You have to go through a counterintelligence review, make sure that proprietary information pertaining to companies is protected and classified information is protected. Where there's going to be a crossover, there has to be, measures put in place to deal with this. There's a Chinese wall that exists between the United States and other nations, a wall of law that, is put in by Congress constitutionally. When Congress takes American taxpayer money or derives income from other sources, and then turns around and turns that money into a budget and says, we're going to spend the money here, there, and there. That's what the power of the purse is. The power of the purse isn't just able to say, here's the money. It's to say how you spend the money. What goes on. There's congressional oversight requirements. Right. What this law is doing is breaking through that Chinese wall and allowing Israel to infiltrate the totality of American defense research and development, to get into the technologies. And when I say technologies, for instance, we right now in America have in the Defense Department a requirement to buy American. So if you're going to build something, if the department's going to buy something, it has to be American made. Well, not anymore. If this is passed, it's going to be buy Israeli, and everything's going to be Israeli because the Israelis are coming in and they're allowed to infiltrate every aspect of this with no congressional review. Congress is allowing the Secretary of Defense to appoint an executive agent who will oversee all of this. And Congress doesn't get to pick and choose this person. This person exists, and he doesn't have to report to Congress. There's no reporting. I mean, there is reporting required, but Congress doesn't come in and get to say, no. This is how we want you to spend the money. This is how we want you to do that. It's done totally independent. So Congress is punted on this one. This is basically Congress saying, we're going to let Israel in. I liken it to a camel under a tent. The camel's nose gets under the tent, and if you don't bang it on the nose, the whole camel's in the tent. And right now, this is Section 219, the camel's nose getting under the tent. And if we don't smack it down right now, the entire Israeli camel is going to be in the American tent, and they're going to take control. This is literally a backhanded coup d'etat. This is the United States ceding the totality of its sovereignty. Because again, once you have control of the technology, you have control of the research, you define outcomes. You define weapon systems, tactics, everything. And Israel is going to be able to come in and shape the American military to be a parallel, to be interoperable with the Israeli military till they are literally one and the same.
Isn't the American military many, many times the size of the Israeli military? Question number one. Question number two, does this apply to Intel as well, the CIA and Mossad?
Well, there's a whole separate intelligence procurement thing that does the same thing. But from the Defense Department, yes, this gets involved in technologies that are related to intelligence, sensitive technology, drone technologies, AI, all of it, Israel will be taking over. Again, indirectly, it just opens the door. But anybody who's worked with the Israelis, I have, we know what happens when you open the door. They're in, they own it, they take it. And we have the same problem in the intelligence. It's a whole different piece of legislation, but it's creating the same sort of backdoor for Israel to come into the intelligence community through the various, research and development, various programs, technical support programs. Israel will now get involved and embedded in these as well. It's the end of American sovereignty.
And what would be the reason why the neocons and the arch Zionists, I'm thinking of people like Senator Cotton, the late Senator Graham, Senator Cruz, Mike Huckabee, why would this crowd want this while they're claiming to be American patriots?
Well, first of all, we know they're not American patriots. We know that Ted Cruz gave an interview to Tucker Carlson where he said that I joined the Senate so I could serve Israel. Senator Graham serves Israel. Tom Cotton serves Israel. They all serve Israel. They've all admitted to serving Israel. They just claim that serving Israel is a very American thing to do. It's not. Serving America is an American thing to do. But because they serve Israel, they recognize certain trends taking place today. For instance, over 60% of the American public polls anti-Israeli today because of Gaza, because of the genocide. There's a huge shift in the current of how America feels towards Israel. And these people see that. And they recognize, left to their own devices, the American people are going to demand a separation of the United States and Israel. Also within Israel, there's a recognition that the greater Israeli project is floundering. In Lebanon right now, they're getting slaughtered by Hezbollah. They're not advancing. Syria, they're not getting what they want. Iran's kicking their butt. It's becoming complicated. By basically melding the United States and Israel together the way the Section 219 does, you're ensuring long-term longevity. That basically Israel, the strategic depth of Israel is now the United States because they are one and the same. I liken it to a parasite's relationship with a host, especially the kind of parasite that lays eggs and the larvae take over the host. I've written an article about this where I liken Israel to the green wasp and America to the American cockroach. The green wasp lays eggs and the larva takes over the American cockroach, directs it, and then consumes it. And this is what's happening here. This is about preserving the legacy of Zionism, preserving the legacy of the Israeli experiment. And that's why anybody in the Congress who's supporting this understands committing literally an act of treason against the United States, because they know why they're doing this. The other thing they're doing is they're paid for. Not a single one of these people does it because they wake up in the morning and go, in my heart of hearts, I support Israel. They do it because Israel bought them. Israel brags about spending $130 million to buy Congress. And this is what you get when you allow a foreign power to buy Congress.
When you say to buy Congress, of course, well, I shouldn't say, of course, do you mean just to fund their elections, or do you mean other means of enriching members of Congress?
Well, we can speak about the most obvious, which is, of course, AIPAC saying we're going to spend $100 million to take control of Congress. They said that in the last electoral cycle. We also know that AIPAC and other pro-Israeli groups spent $30 million to oust Thomas Massie from the United States Congress. But there's other ways as well. I mean, for instance, this whole defense industry, Ray McGovern called it Mickey Matt, the military-industrial complex and its relationship with Congress. That's another way by enriching. Every one of these members of Congress is, maybe some exceptions, but the vast majority of them go in making $56,000, come out millionaires because they get insider stock options on defense industry because they get to make the decisions about which contracts to let, et cetera. Israel plays a role. Now Israel is going to be taking over defense industry, and therefore that's going to enrich people even more. The Israelis enrich them through speaking contracts, through other deals, real estate deals. If you break this down, and again, you're not allowed to do this in the United States. For instance, you're not allowed to ask the question, why is American mainstream media controlled by Jewish people who are linked to AIPAC? It's very rare to find the outlier, the Jewish American who's in Hollywood who says, "No, I don't support Israel." No, they're rare. They exist, but they're rare. The vast majority of them support Israel and are active supporters of AIPAC and other pro-Israeli groups. They have hijacked the totality of the information spectrum here in America, which means they look at real estate. Look at New York City real estate. You want to make money in New York City? Find me a non-American Jewish realtor that does big business. You can't. I mean, of course you can, but I'm just saying that the vast majority, for a minor segment of the population, the amount of leverage they have over the American way of life is mind-boggling. And this is how you buy Congress, because it's not just about the direct money you infuse into their campaign. It's about the totality of the picture.
When Benjamin Netanyahu was here last week, ostensibly to attend the funeral for the late Senator Lindsey Graham, he did, of course, meet with President Trump at the White House. That sort of public thing where they try and make people laugh in the Oval Office, but a private meeting as well. Nobody from the U.S. government met him at the airport when he arrived. Nobody from the U.S. government was at the airport, Dulles Airport, when he left. He told Fox News that night that he had the best conversation with Donald Trump he's ever had. The White House issued no statements. The president made no comment. And Haaretz said Bibi came home empty-handed. What do you think happened?
Well, this president only likes to hang out with winners. Bibi's on the way out. His party's losing. He's not the future of Israel. Bibi's a nobody from the president's standpoint. What can Bibi bring to this president anymore? He's a prime minister right now with a very short life expectancy. This is just the reality of how the president treats people who can't do things. The president's a friend to nobody except himself. And the president uses people. He doesn't help people. He uses people. And if Benjamin Netanyahu, as the prime minister now, brings connectivity to the totality of Israel, then the president will work with Bibi. But right now, there's a lot of resentment, a lot of anger about past slights. And the president is treating Bibi the way you treat somebody who's on their way out the door. The president's waiting for the next prime minister to come in. But this doesn't mean that the president's turned his back on the Israeli project. The Israeli project is bigger than Bibi Netanyahu. The Israeli project is, deals with the totality of the mechanisms of control that go beyond simply the prime minister of Israel.
To Russia, why does the United States want to destroy Russia?
The United States spent decades in the Cold War taking on the Soviet Union, and we recognized at that time that the Soviet Union, with all of its resources, if it ever got its act together, could pose a huge problem for the United States, perhaps even be a superior power in the world. And we sought to isolate the Soviet Union, and we tried to tear it down from inside. And ultimately, the Soviet Union collapsed on its own volition. Whether or not the United States played a role in that is for historians to judge. I think most people admit that it was probably more about Mikhail Gorbachev mismanaging perestroika and glasnost and starting in motion processes he couldn't control that caused the collapse. But once the Soviet Union was collapsed, there was a strategic decision made that we can never allow Russia to rise up again, that we'd have to break Russia up. Margaret Thatcher articulated this in the 1980s, when she talked about Russia, all the resources that Russia had, and that basically we couldn't allow Russia to have those resources. So we needed to go in and divide Russia up politically. We created classes of oligarchs who dominated regions, and then the goal was basically to break Russia up into smaller parts. The whole Chechen conflict was designed to achieve just that: take away Chechnya, open the door to take away Kazan and Tataria, Bashkiria, to strip these Muslim republics away. Siberia breakaway, Far East breakaway, to create smaller elements that we could then play off against one another and control economically. That's why big oil was going in and trying to dominate the scene. That's why we brought in the Bill Browders of the world, who were working on behalf of foreign intelligence to, corrupt the entire system, to take ownership, to consolidate Russian economic power in Western hands. And then the worst thing in the world happened to the United States. Their drunken alcoholic facilitator, Boris Yeltsin, stepped aside, and a very effective leader, Vladimir Putin, stepped in. And for 26 years, Vladimir Putin's been correcting the mistakes of Boris Yeltsin. And we deeply resent this. We don't want a strong, unified Russia. We don't want a Russia that stands on its own 2 feet. We don't want a Russia that's in control of its resources. We need to be in control of its resources. If you go back and take a look at the statements that people have made about what makes good U.S.-Russian relations, Joe Biden stands out March 2011 addressing a opposition group in Moscow saying, don't elect Putin, get a president in who will change the laws of Russia to facilitate American investments. But the American investments can only happen when you create the condition for American economic control of Russia. That's the goal. That's the objective. Even when you take a look at Trump's efforts to open up relations, what do we want to do? Take control of Russia's rare earth minerals, take control of Russia's, natural resources. We want to go and exploit it. We want control. And then you saw how Donald Trump treats this. It's not a normal economic relation. Look what he said about Ukraine. We signed a treaty. We own their earth. We own their rare earth. We can go in any time and take it, he said. Well, that's his attitude toward Ukraine. That would be his attitude towards Russia. We view Russia as an existential threat because Russia, if it ever gets its act together, has more resources in the United States over a greater territorial expanse, is geopolitically positioned to, have interior lines of communications on the most strategic parts of the world, Europe and Asia. When we have to go across oceans, the oceans used to be our friends. The oceans are becoming our enemy.
Wow. How close to collapse is the Kyiv regime? How close to collapse is its military? I know I've been asking you that for a couple of years.
Yeah. Look, what I've said all along is the absolute truth. The Russians are waging a broad spectrum war of attrition that goes beyond the battlefield. You're dealing with economic attrition, political attrition. The goal of Russia is to get Ukraine to collapse from within. Defeating the military on the battlefield is just one aspect of it. You need to defeat the politicians. You need to collapse their political viability. You need society to recognize this. So you need economic collapse, societal collapse, political collapse, and military collapse. And the goal is to get them all happening about the same time. I honestly believe that this would happen. It could have happened 2 years ago. It would have happened 2 years ago if Russia was doing 2 years ago what they're doing today. But that's been one of the frustrating things, is that Russia has sort of held back and has been looking for other outcomes. And I think the reason for that is that Vladimir Putin has a better understanding about the economic realities of Russia and the global geopolitical posturing that Russia is doing diplomatically, and that you can't succeed transforming Russia into an area where people want to invest and an area where people are comfortable with diplomatic relations if you're waging a war of destruction on the part of Ukraine. The opportunity had to arise where Vladimir Putin could transition into this new campaign seamlessly. So people would say, well, you had no other choice. And here, literally, it's not just the global community, but the Russian population are saying the president had no other choice. He had no choice but to do this. So what else are you supposed to do when Zelensky declares a 40-day drone war that starts blowing up, refineries and wild berries and sending drones into beaches, murdering children, murdering civilians, murdering children. I mean, at that point in time, the frustration level is such that Putin now has the gloves off, and he's doing things that 2 years ago would have gotten him condemned in the world. Shutting down Odessa means shutting down Ukraine's ability to export grain to the world. It means destroying the Ukrainian economy. No one in the world is raising a peep right now because they know that Ukraine caused this. Ukraine behaved irresponsibly. Ukraine has created the conditions for the Russian counterstroke. So right now what you see is everything that I've been saying is happening on an accelerated basis. I've been watching it happen in slow motion, expecting that you'll get a confluence of events that come in and collapse. There's the firefighters I warned you about. The trucks are moving now, so the dogs are excited. But they got flashing red lights, and the dogs get excited about this stuff, like little kids. Oh, look, firefighters. But the point is, you're looking at right now in a speed that the layperson can see. Political collapse. There's people in the streets right now demanding Zelensky's out. The real support rate for Zelensky in Ukraine is less than 10%. If there was an election today, he would be routed. That's why he has to control the situation. The corruption is unreal. The military is being crushed.
We can run this while the dogs are barking. President Zelensky in 2022, right before the special military operation started. Chris, number 6.
I want to emphasize this once again. I've said this before, but I really want you to hear me this time, and in the end, to convey this to your readers, viewers, and internet users. But do you understand or not that if Ukraine joins NATO and tries to take back Crimea by military means, European countries will automatically be drawn into a military conflict with Russia? Of course, the combined potential of NATO and Russia is incomparable. We understand that. But we also understand that Russia is one of the leading nuclear powers, and in some aspects, in terms of modernity, it even surpasses many others. There will be no winners, and you will find yourselves drawn into this conflict against your will. You won't even have time to blink before you start implementing Article 5 of the Rome Treaty. Mr. President, of course, does not want this outcome, and I don't want it either.
Obviously, that was President Putin, even though I inadvertently said Zelensky while I was listening to Maverick and the other one reacting to the fire trucks across the street. Back to how close it is for the Kyiv military to collapse.
Say again.
Back to the question about how close we are to the collapse of the Kyiv military.
Well, it's curious when you listen to the speech that Putin made back then. You know, he said an interesting thing. Of course, the combined military potential of NATO and Russia are incomparable. He said that was in 2022. Today, it's totally different. You know, there is no military potential in NATO. They've gutted themselves. There's nothing there. They really can't do anything. Russia, on the other hand, has fixed almost all of its problems, has the most combat-hardened, combat-experienced military in the world, position with a fully functioning defense industry that's pumping out weapons like you've never seen. NATO can't even begin to match this. So the situation is far different today in terms of, you know, the risk gain analysis that's done. Back then, Russia's like, if we push too hard, of course, we could drag NATO into this conflict, and we don't want to do that. Today, Russia's like, NATO what? No, you're not even, you don't exist. The Germans got nothing. The French got nothing. The Poles got nothing. The British got nothing. America's got nothing. Nobody has anything. Even collectively, they've got nothing, a big zero. So Russia now feels that they can be more aggressive on the battlefield, which they are being. And it's not just on the battle on the front line, but they're taking the fight to the totality. Russia has achieved, again, something that 2 years ago they could have achieved, which is the elimination of Ukraine's air defense. It's not a hard thing. They already had the situation beat. They knew they could flood the zone, they could exhaust and they could cut off the supplies, but they didn't do it. Now Russia has done it. I think that Russia fired, 56 missiles into Kiev last night. One Patriot rose up in response. That's it. That's probably the last Patriot. There's nothing left in Ukraine. Nothing. So Ukraine is wide open. Russia's now rolling back the totality of Ukraine's industrial capacity. They're eliminating gas stations. They've blown up 400, two of which are never going to come back. Right now, you can't get gas near the front line. Remember all the Ukrainians bragging? And our good friend Gilbert Doctor, there's no gas in the Crimea. Well, there is gas in Crimea, Gilbert. The Russians have solved that problem. You know where there's no gas? Kherson, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Kharkiv. That rolling backwards. It's the Ukrainians that don't have any gas. It's the Ukrainians that have zero industrial capacity there because Russia's blowing up the factories with things that go boom. You remember that refining shortage that Russia was having? Well, the last results coming out of Bloomberg is Russia's not only fixed everything, they're producing more refined petroleum product now than they have for years. So the concept that Ukraine has done something to Russia is absurd in the extreme. The Russians are dominating across the board, and the Ukrainians have nothing left. They are dying in droves. They have no defense industry. The drone gamble has failed. Yes, they can take a drone and throw it into a beach in South Russia and kill children. Yay, Ukraine. I'm really impressed. Murdering children. That's how you win a war. But they can't do anything of note against the Russian military, which advancing, they're 4 kilometers away from Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. And when they take those two cities, that's it. The Donbass is theirs, and they're not going to stop there. So we are seeing things unfold in real time right now. And for the first time, we can watch as all of the collapse is taking place. This winter, there will be no heat in Ukraine. The president is all but Zelensky's acknowledged it. I haven't solved this problem. There is no solution. No heat, no gas, no water, no nothing. Ukraine dies this winter while their military dies right now. I think we're looking at the confluence of events where you can see the total collapse of Ukraine in the very near future.
Do we know where Trump is on all this, no matter what influencers whisper into his ears?
I think right now Trump is so hyper-focused on Iran. I mean, that's got all of his attention because he's losing in Iran. I mean, this is a huge embarrassment to the United States of America. Ostensibly the biggest, baddest military in the world got their butts handed to them by the Iranians. We're not achieving any of our objectives, and he's singularly focused on this. There's nothing he can do about Ukraine right now. And the other thing is, even if he wanted to, the door's shut. Lavrov shut the door. Lavrov said, "We're done. We're done with the false notion that the United States is a relevant player here. The United States lies to us. We don't trust anybody. The door is closed. We're on our way." And I think Putin has made similar, he hinted at the similar outcome when he stood before the Duma and got permission, basically got a blank check from the Duma to be more bold. He said, not yet. I'm going to hold on. But he now has the blank check written. He doesn't have to worry about politically going back. He can go bold anytime he wants to, and he's waiting for the right moment to go bold, to bring about the total collapse of Ukraine. Trump's got nothing in response. What Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who are the laughing stock of the whole world right now, he's sending Kash Patel over in October. This might be a desperate gambit, but what's Kash Patel going to bring?